Hello and welcome to another episode of Super Black. We are your hosts, Carl and Daniel.
What's going on, folks?
And today we are going to discuss one of the longest running black heroes in Marvel history. Not the first, but definitely one of the best. Mr. Luke Cage, Power Man, the strongest man alive. Not really. So, first and foremost, I want to get your thoughts. How do you like Luke Cage as a character in general, as a whole? You came in and you saw Luke Cage one day. Do you remember the first time you actually read like a Luke Cage story or saw him on screen or saw him in a comic book? Do you remember that?
The first time I ever saw Luke Cage was back in the early 90s when I was buying the Marvel cards, Marvel Comics cards.
Yes.
And the first time I ever saw his image was the classic yellow button-down shirts with the chain around his waist. And I remember looking at that, it's like, that's very 70s. Like you couldn't escape that that's what that was. Like very, very 70s, even down to the hair.
That's a great point, and I'm glad you brought that up first. Let's talk about his look and feel over the years, because I feel like Luke Cage is a time capsule, you know? Every iteration of Luke Cage represents a decade in American history, I feel. Like when he was born in the 70s, dude looks like he was born in the 70s. Like he's got the very big brim collar. He's got the shirt open down the chest. He's got the afro. He's got some sort of like silver bandana bangle covering his forehead, splitting up his afro. You know, he's got the classic superhero kind of look and feel with this giant weird chain, like you mentioned. But then later on in his tenure as a superhero, I think like the 80s or whatnot, they got rid of the afro. So he had like more of a short cropped haircut and a leather jacket. And he moved the bangle from the top of his head down to his belt. So if anyone's never seen Luke Cage, or if you've seen a picture of Luke Cage before, imagine this silver kind of tiara, an upside down tiara on his head. He takes it, makes it bigger, and uses it as a belt.
He had the 90s fade.
He totally had a 90s fade.
Yep.
Like he went from a 70s look where like totally stuck in that decade to having a 90s look to now he's kind of a more generic looking black guy. He's just a bald, big black guy. And actually before he became just a regular bald, big black guy, he was a big black guy with like a wife beater on. And, you know, I remember he had a gold ring, like those hold fisted rings that said like Luke Cage on it.
I was wondering if you're going to get to that because people tend to leave that part out. I don't know if it was like a blemish or what on Marvel, but the Max series, like he was straight up thug.
He was a gangster.
Yeah,
he was a complete thug. Mm-hmm. He wore chains. He had I'll never forget that kind of like the nameplate rings that he had that said Luke Cage on it. Like it was such a strange direction to take him in, but also completely in line with his character because he was at the start, I believe he was a member of the Bloods, and he was like a petty thief and a gang member. So I guess they were taking that aspect of it and turning it into something a little bigger. But his outward appearance was I didn't like that one, only because I mean thugs are just violent people, you know, like, and I don't want to associate my superhero with such a negative look, which is why I think they buried it. Mm-hmm. You know, because you can't sell that look to comic book lovers only if those guys are like gangbangers, I guess. And would they even be interested in a comic book? Yeah, it's a harder sell. So they kind of shied away from it, and they actually turned him into a family man. So then he just becomes this regular old dude, but he has superpowers.
Yeah, it's like he became the leader of the New Avengers for a little while, and then his wife went to Canada when the whole Civil War thing was happening.
And his wife is
Jessica Jones.
There you go.
Thank you. I don't know why that just slipped my mind for that brief second.
It's because I put you on the spot.
I wanted to say Alias. That's what happened. Like the first thing popped was like, no, that's not right.
No, it would have been correct because that was the name of her agency. But
Ah, yes.
I would have just said like, and her name actually is like you'll get there.
Hmm.
I know you know it, but right. So which of the incarnations of Luke Cage's look and feel do you like more?
Um, right now, I'm a big fan of the new artist, Sanford, because like it still has the classic yellow top of Luke Cage,
Mm-hmm.
but it's more business, right?
Very much,
Because
yeah.
the one thing I realized, the looks they've kept throughout the years for Luke Cage is always a yellow top. And everything just kind of like goes around it. Yeah, you had the leather jacket for a little while, but there's always like the yellow top that's involved. And the new one looks like he's an
Very
adult
much, yes.
businessman.
He looks like a businessman.
Yes. So I'm completely down with that one. The old one's like very reminiscent of '70s black exploitation,
Yeah,
and
we'll get into that one.
they'll forever be known. Like if that's the first thing that pops to your mind when you hear Luke Cage. But I'm a big fan of what they're trying to present now.
It the new books, while I've only read the first few, are very good, very well written, and the art is gorgeous.
Oh yes.
I am a big fan of the new books and their art style, and I agree. His new look is very is a nice take on it with the yellow shirt. He wears like a suit, or perhaps like a one of those vests. Like he has his yellow shirt with a bit like a business vest on, like a suit vest or something. And he's just this giant, imposing man. He almost looks like Michael Clark Duncan in his take on Kingpin in the
Yes.
Daredevil movie.
Yeah.
He looks just like that. So if you guys can go and see a picture of Michael Clark Duncan playing Kingpin, that's basically what Luke Cage looks like now.
Mm-hmm.
Replace the white shirt with the yellow shirt, you got it.
Yep.
So I'm on the other side. I love the 70s look. I think that is the funkiest, funniest outfit you can put on a superhero and have him go whoop somebody's ass. And it's everything about the 70s comic. We were talking about this off cast, is still pretty relevant today. Like you can go back and read those books and you still see some weird things that happen in the book that occur these days. And but it's like wrapped in a filter of the 70s that I really enjoy. And maybe it's because I'm a big fan of The Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
Love that movie.
Ah.
So it reminds me he looks like he belongs in that movie, which I will always love and I will always get behind.
That's a very good point. Never thought about it that way. No, okay, so I have a newfound respect for that costume now. Like
It's really iconic, right? Because when you think of Luke Cage, if you're like a comic book character, comic book lover, you'll probably think of that because that's probably the first time you saw him and Iron Fist standing together in their weird, very classic superhero costumes.
mm-hmm.
Like it's a superhero costume. Right now, his outfit these days is a business suit. This is a superhero outfit. Like you won't go outside looking like that unless you're going to whoop somebody's behind.
Or you live in the '70s and you're in the middle of a black exploitation movie.
Exactly, and that's what I love about the books, the old books. They are basically a black exploitation movie, and somebody just drew it.
Yeah,
They just drew one.
I
And
mean,
it's amazing.
he's a direct result of that era. Marvel was trying to capitalize on the popularity of black exploitation movies. It's like we need our own black character. I mean, and that's why Iron Fist came about the same time as well. It's because like, okay, so you had the whole kung fu craze back in the day, so let's create this character that has kung fu, that performs kung fu, and same thing with Luke Cage. So seeing that, and understanding the Warriors, yeah, this totally absolutely makes sense. So I love it.
Do you actually read a lot of the comics that Luke Cage has had besides the new run? And if so, did you like them? And if not, why did you never actually get into them?
In the '90s, when I first found out about him, I thought he was just another generic character that didn't really make any sense. Like, this is just me. You see Captain America, you see Iron Man, like more iconic characters. And don't get me wrong, Luke Cage is iconic in his own right, but I just didn't get it. I didn't start reading Cage until, he started showing up in Avengers. When he was given like a more of a foreground, he became more of a foreground character in those. It was Civil War. It was Avengers Disassembled.
Yeah.
when he had, it's like, he had more of a role in those things. And then I tried reading the Max series of Cage. And even though I love the artist, it was just a little too much for me at that point. Right? It was too forced. It seemed like that character was way too forced, down to the headphones that he walked around with all the time.
Yeah, it's a strange. There's a period in the 2000s where Luke Cage became a parody of himself, in just in terms of like look and feel, like as they were drawing him, and it was like you said, it was way too much. Like you're trying so hard to make him look like this. It's not a stereotype, but it's like this vision of what you think like a hip hop
Yes,
hero would look like,
absolutely.
and you just pour that into like this bucket, just like gobs and gobs of like, he needs attitude, he needs glasses, he's got to be really big and buff, and he's got to be, he can't wear a shirt, can't be strong and wear a shirt, and he's like, it just like you said, felt forced. That's the best way to put it. Just really forced.
Mm-hmm. And now the latest iteration, like I think we both agree that it's a great series, and just interrupt me if you disagree, but I feel it works best because you have those two characters from the same era interact with one another, and they're allowed to have their own personalities based off one another. If that makes any sense, stop me if it doesn't.
Are you referring to Luke Cage and
Iron Fist, yes, Luke Cage, Luke Cage, because even back in the '90s when I saw Iron Fist, right, the way he was represented, the artist that drew him back in the day, like I had a completely different understanding of who Iron Fist actually was, right? And based on the new series, like he's a much more laid back. He kind of reminds me of Michelangelo from Ninja Turtles.
That's a good parallel.
Yes,
he's very skilled, but he is very nonchalant about it all. Like he's in the new series. Maybe this will entice somebody to read it, which I really hope this does. Luke Cage is a family man. He's with Jessica Jones. He has his daughter, and he's done with the Heroes for Hire. Iron Fist, on the other hand, really, really wants to get the gang back together, and he's very much into having Luke Cage be his partner again. And they basically get into a problem, a scuffle, as all comic book characters do, which ends up putting them together again and reforming this team. And the whole time, Iron Fist is like, "Come on, man, you should just come back. It'll be great." And Luke Cage is like, "No, I'm not going to do it. I told Jessica I wasn't going to do this." And he's like, and Iron Fist on the other side is like, "You'll do it. It'll be fine. You're going to join me." And he's like, "No, I'm not. We're not back together." He goes, "Yeah, we are."
It's that classic buddy cop.
Oh, it's total buddy cop, total friggin' Lethal Weapon.
Yes.
He's totally Danny Glover. He's too old for this. He's too old for this. And the other guy's like, "Nah, you're good. Everything's fine. I need you with me."
Yeah.
I'm
It's like, and I'm seeing that dynamic is what's making me, and it still has the hints of its blaxploitation roots on top of that as well. That feel as like, this is very modern day. The dialogue seems very natural for what it is, but at the same time, like I can still hear that '70s Shaft, Dolomite soundtrack playing in the background.
And I think the great thing about it is the writing. They give him a reason to say really ridiculous things by saying that he's trying not to curse because his daughter asked him not to. Mm-hmm. So every time he's going to curse, he'll say something really strange. It feels like a '70s saying. Yes. And you're reading it and you're just like, "Why did he say that?" And you go, "Oh man," he's like, "Because I can't curse. I have to say something else. I have to say something PG for my daughter." So I like that little conceit to get him to say really funky stuff, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the upcoming show, since we don't know a whole lot about it. But what are your thoughts going in to this new show?
Based on the trailers I've seen alone, it looks really well put together. Down to the soundtrack, down to just a basic look. I heard somebody talk about the other day where it looks like every character seems fleshed out, even down to the bad guy himself. Forgive me, I can't remember his name right now.
Cottonmouth.
Cottonmouth. Like you just from the trailer alone, you could tell exactly what this character is all about. You can tell what he idolizes, and it seems like the soundtrack is going to be, that third character in that series, and I can't wait
Yeah.
for that.
They're heavily pushing the soundtrack, and I'm really looking forward to it. They have a lot of, and this is kind of what I like about it. The same thing we were talking about, where they were forcing that hip hop feel on some of the characterizations of Luke Cage earlier in the 2000s, where he was kind of rough and a thug. This one is infusing that hip hop culture into it with the music and the setting, where there's a picture of Cottonmouth with that iconic painting of Biggie with the crown, and it's behind Cottonmouth, and the crown is like framed in a certain way. It looks like Cottonmouth has the crown on his head.
Yes.
Just seeing that type of shot, that's just a beautiful shot where you pan over and you see that painting and you know exactly what this guy grew up listening to. You know what his influences were. You know why he's in the whatever, the drug game or the crime game. It's just that shot tells you so much about the world in which Luke Cage is going to be operating. Cottonmouth runs that city or runs that part of town, and you can see why.
It's
where he's
Harlem. Let's get this straight. He is Harlem.
I can't wait. I can't wait for this show.
Yep.
How did you feel on his take in Jessica Jones? Did you like how he portrayed Luke Cage?
This is from just a straight standpoint, like a fanboy standpoint. His look had to grow on me because when I think Luke Cage, I always feel like big, or like a rock physique.
Mm-hmm.
But Michael Coltier, he grew on that role, and I really like it. The dynamic between him and Jessica Jones made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
And then you could always tell when that character had his painful past that he was trying to get away from, just like Jessica Jones.
They were broken. They were both damaged superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was I enjoyed the take as well. There's fun. There is fun inside of Luke Cage's character. Like we were speaking about his catchphrase of "Sweet Christmas," which is I still think is the worst. But it's that type of dialogue that we need. Well, not that specifically, but just that type of dialogue we need to just kind of pump things up and just flesh that character out a little bit, because he can't just be dark and sad all the time.
But with that being said, do you think they're going to explore the lighter side? Because everything that I've seen so far, it seems like the Netflix universe of Marvel Television is the Marvel Knights version. So everything's going to be dour. Everything's going to be a little darker, which gives them more time to flesh out these very insane bad guys.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what makes it scary. And I want it to have a little more levity to it, but I don't think that's what they're going for.
We're going to do a really fast, a good and bad of the character, just to close everything out. So the highs of the character. What do you like most about the character of Luke Cage?
I like what he's representative of. Even back to when he was created in the 70s, he was representative of movement of that time. And even though he was based off of blaxploitation, like the blaxploitation era, his stories had a very grounded urban feel. And that sounds really weird saying out loud. Like there should be a better way I could be able to put it. But he told stories that, minorities can relate to. Even down to like why he was in prison.
Getting set up.
He got set up by somebody. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Just a minority trying to do right, and he keeps getting into trouble because he's trying to do right.
He has a very timeless feel almost,
yes.
At least in terms of black culture.
Yes.
Or the plight of the black man, as you could say. He's like the stories in the book you can read, and like I said, it kind of translates to now.
Yeah.
Here's a nice little thing you guys can pick up. The Epic Collection, Power Man and Iron Fist, Heroes for Hire, has a lot of the original 70s stories of Luke Cage and Iron Fist and all the problems they ran about. And it's like I said, it's basically a blaxploitation movie somebody drew and put in a book. Here's my little even shorter list. I love his costume, like I said. I love the fact that he operated in the 70s, so we got amazing characters like a guy named Comanche. The fact that he helps people. He's this ground level hero. And one of the best things about the character, he was a freelancer,
Yes.
which you and I both know how hard that is. He is a freelance superhero. Now, if you haven't listened to an earlier episode of Super Black where we discuss how to be a superhero freelancer, Luke Cage and Iron Fist are basically the inspiration for that cast. So go back and listen to that, especially if you're a freelancer. There's some really good tips in there. All right, so the bad points. Do you have anything bad to say about Mr. Cage, or less than favorable?
Oh, that's easy. The 90s.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like that's all encompassing. Like if anybody's listening, just look up Luke Cage in the 90s. I don't have to get into it. It's just very weird time because you could tell they ran into a rut. Like, what do we do with this character here? And they just kind of kept redesigning and making it a little weirder and making that belt a little bigger and that chain a little bulkier. And at one point, he just kind of sank into the background and just kind of went away.
Yeah. They made him a thug, and that's not how you capture a broader audience,
No.
Like, I like to think that comic books bring people together, which is why I feel this podcast needs to exist. Like, you need to bring other people in who've never heard of Luke Cage. And the way not to do that is to take a negative stereotype of a certain people and attach it to an iconic character. Like you can't sell that character to everybody. You can sell it to like 1% of 1%.
Yep.
Everybody else is just like, I can't get behind that.
Oh, here's a random idea. Can we dress up as Heroes for Hire for Halloween?
Which one are you and which one am I?
I'm totally Luke Cage. I'll shave my head bald. I have no problem with that at all.
You get that. Fine. I am not shaving my head because I'm afraid it won't grow back. I can totally be Iron Fist. I need those collars. You see, I will take that bullet, but then do I have to get the tattoo on my chest?
I mean, you can paint it on.
All right. So
I say it wouldn't have to be a real tattoo. Like, hell, I would, just create a stencil like any graffiti artist and just spray it on there real quick and you're good to go.
I got to do a lot of bench presses to get my chest looking good to have like a shirt open for that.
No! It's like Danny Rand is skinny. Danny Rand is Bruce Lee.
I'm not. Is what I'm saying.
I mean, you're
that's not me.
You're slenderer than I am. You could pull that off. It hasn't been like I'm not as big as Luke Cage, but I'm willing to go for it.
How about we do 2 decades of Luke Cage? Like I'll be the 70s and you'll be the new one. All right. So either we'll shit. I want to do this now. If I can find me a yellow jacket, I will totally dress up in the 70s. If you want to do the 2015 version of Luke Cage, or if I can find a dope ass Iron Fist outfit, I'll wear that too. I can swap during the night.
There you go.
All right, we're going to discuss this off cast. All right.
Yeah.
So the bads of the 90s, and I think that one bad thing about Luke Cage is a man called the Bushmaster.
Oh, boy.
That's all I'm going to say. All right. That is our Luke Cage conversation. I hope you guys found a little more information about this character. Please watch the Netflix series. Why am I pimping the Netflix series as if everyone's not going to really watch it? But please watch that show and support it because it's a great character. And stay tuned for the rest of the show. All right, folks, we're going to try something new. We hope you enjoy this little thing. What we're going to do now is we're going to concept our own superhero. Now, we're going to take everything that we've learned over our decades and decades of being nerds. We're going to take the lessons learned from speaking about whatever hero you heard about in the first section, and we're going to craft our own superhero, and you will be an active participant, hopefully. So, first question I would like to ask you, Dan. What makes a good super person? What's your like Not so much template. What's your template for making a good super person? It's a good, yeah, that's a good. I agree. I think being a relatable character helps bring more people in. It helps, ground the person. I think that's a very important aspect. So let's start off with what should we call this person? I'm thinking alter ego. What kind of name should we put on him? And I think this might um, inform the gender and the race of the character. So, what kind of names do you like?
I only have one, and it's
Mm-hmm.
pretty biased. Simple,
Good.
super black.
Okay. But what? All right. All right. What about his alias? Like, what about the first, like first and last name of this person? Is it a person? Is it a man? Is it a woman? Is it a robot? I don't know the
I
answer to
don't
these
know.
questions yet.
I'd say, you
This is why
know,
we're here. I'm trying to figure it out. What would be the upside to having a robot super person? We wouldn't have to build in any superhero powers because kind of it's a robot, so they can be upgradable. But then you fall into the trap of having like a Mazo, where they just become gods.
but and then they just stop being relatable in general. Like,
Yeah,
are you giving this character what kind of personality? Are you going to have him be Data from Star Trek?
if it were to be a robot, it would have to be a robot that didn't know it was a robot.
Ah, okay. So
So
you find it out like a couple of months down the road in some weird story arc.
yeah, maybe like really deep in it. Like maybe the last thing you find out is that it's a robot.
All right, we're putting the horse before the cart. We're
I think we put the road and and the house before the cart, the money, everything. We
Mhm.
put everything. All right, let's back up.
All right.
Super Black, we're definitely going to call it Super Black. I agree with you. That'll be the code name. Which for now, I think we'll say it's Super Black because that might get weird later on. So I'm going to write down Super Black colon. There's a specific name that I always kick around in my head for some reason. Walter Monte. It's a terrible name, but I love how that sounds. What I tell you,
Mhm.
ambulance.
Yeah, that's the
Always.
fourth one today in the span of an hour.
Maybe, maybe. It's like they get a memo. It's always recording. Just drive down the street, man. Is anybody in the car? No, just go. Doesn't matter.
Um, I will. I like the name Walter Monte,
It's
but
weird.
I want to kind of throw it out there.
Hmm.
Let's back away from gender for a little while
Okay.
and have it be ambiguous for a little while. Like have it be in costume
Okay.
for a few issues, so people are guessing. It's like, who are you? What are you?
Okay. So all right. So then we are gonna completely take down what let's save name gender for another episode, and we'll break down the basic look and feel
Mhm.
version one of this superhero. So if we're going to cover this person's face head to toe, what does this costume look like? Like this is the hardest thing. I mean,
Okay,
this is
so
where
just go with me on this one. All right,
uh
so NASA recently created a fabric where it is so black that your brain registers it as a hole in space.
wow.
So what if this character literally got a hold of this $1 billion fabric and created a costume that when you look at it, your brain thinks it's looking at a hole. Like think Looney Tunes when they
Like
run
a
through a
hole in
wall and create a
like a
shape of
hole in
themselves.
space.
Yes,
Like oh like there's a cut out in the universe that you're
yes,
staring through. That's pretty goddamn sick.
yes.
A hole in space, blacker than black, Blacker than black.
And this is why nobody knows the gender, that they can't tell what they're looking at. It's a silhouette, but their brain is just like, imagine that, looking at something and your brain is registered as it's not actually there. It's just a hole in space. I Google it. It is even on like the picture looks like what it says. I want to see that thing in person.
It's called super black material.
Yes.
It is called super black material. All right, we can't not. All right, I'm gonna put this. Your brain registers it as a whole, as a tear in the universe. That's interesting, and it makes art easy for someone. Like
Yes.
It's just like, hey, you see this outline here on the page? Just don't do anything there. That's just black.
Like imagine like this light does not reflect off of this like at all. It's like, is that how? I'm not even sure how the science actually works. Like, is it that it's reflecting? It doesn't reflect it. It just swallows the light up completely.
It like a black hole.
Yes.
Everything it gets absorbed into. That's an interesting. I think from even an art perspective, would they cast a shadow? Because light would just be absorbed into the person. There would be nothing to.
That's a good question.
There would be no reflection because all the light would just be absorbed into the outfit.
Well, let's just say for the superhero's sake, that's exactly what happens. I'm not sure. No, the actual material itself casts a shadow.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
But we're creating a super person, so we can say it doesn't.
Yes, exactly.
The fabric just absorbs everything. It absorbs all light around it. All right, so it sounds like this fabric is going to be the basis of a lot of the powers, at least to start, because it sounds kind of dope. So, guys, your first taste of our little creative studio where we're going to build a super black superhero or hero or super person. We haven't even said if it's going to be a hero. The person's name is Super Black so far, and the basic look and feel is this person has found, or this thing has found NASA fabric that is called super black fabric. I am not kidding. It is called super black fabric, and it is blacker than black, and in our story, it absorbs all light around it. This is a great time to introduce our new community section where you guys tell us what you would like to see about this hero. So for the first one, let's say, what do you think about this NASA fabric and in terms of the outfit? And remember, this is all in flux. So hit us up on Twitter at SuperBlackSays and share your thoughts. Or head over to superblack.co and go to the contact page and drop us a note. If you have any questions or things you want us to talk about in the cast, or you want to pitch an idea for the superhero or supervillain or super person or super vehicle or something, you can send it through there, and we'll get all your information. Dan, of course, it's always been a wonderful time having you on the podcast because you are the co-host, and that's what you're supposed to do. Thanks everybody for listening to this edition of Super Black.
See you later, folks.
We are out.